Welcome everybody to my session. This session is it's called Build a Team's Provisioning Process using the Request a Team app template. Oh, you know what? I just realized I had the other stuff on here. Kind of use this as my advert slide. But thank you for joining for today. Real quick, if you haven't met me before or haven't seen me present, just a little bit about me. My name is Christina Wheeler. I'm based in Bon Air, Georgia, south of Atlanta. Lived all over, but been here for almost 12 years. I am a Microsoft MVP. I was a solution architect for a very long time. And I recently joined Core BTS as the Director of Innovation. Absolutely loving my job, loving the role, and loving everybody that I'm working with. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, and you can also find me on Twitter. And for those of you that I have a very strong SharePoint background, so I came from the SharePoint world. I was a custom developer before that, very strong in Power Platform, Power BI, and so I just have a passion for technology. There's many of myself and my wonderful colleagues who have co-authored a book. It is an ebook only, and we do monthly updates. So there is the QR code and the bit.ly or the bit.ly link for you, for anyone that's interested in checking that out. Okay, many of you who do know me know I love my dogs. Now I'm in the upstairs office now. My dogs are downstairs, love them dearly, but I needed to be able to get away from them. I've acquired another dog in my pack. You'll see Seamus on the right-hand side. It was a foster fail. I was supposed to have him temporarily, and it's going on. I love him dearly. I've had him for over a year now. Okay. The agenda for today is I'm going to talk about the Microsoft 365 Developer Program. I'm going to give you an introduction to the Teams app templates that are available. And then the core focus of this session is I'm going to talk about the Request a Team app template. Okay, before I get started, in case you haven't heard of this, there is the Microsoft 365 Developer Program. It is free to sign up. I have tenants of my own. These are developer sandbox environments or tenants. Simply just go to the link to sign up, and it gives you a free developer sandbox. It's auto-renewable, which is great, but it's based on your telemetry. So as long as you're using the tenant, it will auto-renew. I have a sandbox environment that is auto-renewed it's been going on 2 years now. And I use it to develop in, to test, to do different things in. And the great thing is it gives you 25 E5 licenses. So you can actually install it has an option when you're setting this up to set up demo users and so on, and demo content. So it's a great environment to test in, to develop in. And I think it's great for if you want to get comfortable with these app templates that I'm going to share with you, you can absolutely sign up for this environment to do that. That way you don't affect production. Now, our world has changed drastically, as we all know. I went from someone flying 90,000 miles a year to being at my house. Now my dogs are very happy that I'm home, and so am I. And what I'm seeing is, you've seen this huge adoptions of Teams. And, some orgs have already been in Teams before the pandemic, and then others have, quickly adopted it or moved to it. And then there's some organizations now that are currently getting off some different platforms and moving to Teams. Well, one of the great things about Teams is there's extensibility that you can do with Teams. And for those of you that are developers, you can develop custom solutions, custom apps for Teams, such as a bot, a messaging extension, and so on. And you can also develop your own Power Apps that you can use within Teams. Well, one of the things Microsoft has done is they've taken different scenarios and built app templates for it. So they took these scenarios and said, hey, we see a need for being able to have building access or some incentives. And so they built different solutions that are available at the app templates. Now, the full catalog, to access it, you just go to aka.ms Teams app templates. And I'll go ahead and click on the link. And when you go to the link, it's going to take you to, this has kind of been revamped. Before, it just took you to the page that had a list of your app templates. But what it'll do is it'll take you to all these available app templates. You'll see some examples. There are some featured app templates on the front here. And then if you want to see the gallery, you would just click on here, the button, see the gallery. And in here, you're going to have information about the app templates. And then if I click on see also down here, oh, I didn't mean to go that far, but here we go. Let's go here. So here's all the different app templates, and this keeps growing. When I first started working with these app templates, there was 4, and I've done demonstrations on those, and now there's a lot more, and it keeps growing. So a lot of these app templates are built on different solutions. Many of them are Power Platform, some of them are Teams bots, some of them are messaging extensions. But what I would recommend is you go and look at these and see if there's any of these app templates that fit any specific scenarios that might be good for you to start with. The great things about these app templates is everything's downloadable via GitHub. And so any of them that you're interested in, you would just click on the link, and then it's going to take you to the GitHub repo for that app template. And each app template is going to have a repository, a zip file you can download. It's going to have documentation, information about that app template, as well as an architecture overview of giving you the architecture of the app template, and also a deployment guide. So each one of these has a deployment guide. It's going to have different instructions depending upon the type of solution you're deploying. The great thing is they're free. You download it, you have all the, you get all the source code. So if it's a messaging extension or if it's Power Apps, Power Platform solution, you get the Power BI report, you get the Power App, you get the flows, and you get all of that. Now you can implement these as is, or you can customize them to fit your need. Let me get back to my presentation here. So I recommend you check those out. Now the one I'm going to focus on demonstrating today is the Request a Team app template. There's a very strong use case for this app template. One of the biggest concerns I've seen with organizations is as they're doing the adoptions of teams, they don't want anybody to just go and be able to create a team. So this became a big ask. Is there a way that we can provision a process so that our users can request having a team created and have an approval process to approve that? And so that's what people were doing, but now you can take this app template, which gives you a full wizard request form, Power App. It's got an approval process that pushes through Power Automate, and then it's got automated team builds. So if any team that's been requested that has been approved will automatically get provisioned through a logic app. And so the architecture behind this, I thought I had the architecture slide on this. Yes, I did. Okay, let me skip back here. Okay, so the wizard approach this is what I'm going to show you is out of the box, and then I'm going to show you, one that's a little customized. So you can start with this out of the box, keep it as is. And one of the things I've recommended to people is sign up for a developer tenant. You will have to have an Azure subscription for the Logic App side, but you can use that tenant to test in. But what I've done is I'll deploy this as is so I can get comfortable with it, see how the deployment instructions are or the steps are, and then customize it to fit my needs. And so we've customized this within core BTS to fit our needs. And so you can take this app as far as you want to take it. But this is a great way to standardize your team creation process. So what'll happen is the users, if you leave it out of the box, the users can click to request to have a team built from scratch or created from a template. If they were to click to create it from a template, what'll happen is they'll have these templates they can choose from, and they're going to have this full wizard approach on being able to put a request to have a team created. And then what'll happen is that there will be a queue here on the request. And so you can see there's been requests here. Here's all of these ones that I had submitted. Some of them are pending approval. I could see which ones the actual team was created and which ones were rejected. Now, the architecture behind this app template is it consists of a Power App, which is going to be the interface for the users to input the request. There's also a Power Automate flow. There's 2 different flows. There's a flow that's going to, when I do the demo, I'll walk into that more. But there's a flow, there's 2 flows in Power Automate, and one of them is for the approval process, and it's going to use adaptive cards, but I'll dive into that when I do the demo. Then you also have the Logic App that's going to do the provisioning side. And then the back end of this for the data, for the request, is just in SharePoint lists. And so the great thing about this is this whole solution, with the exception of the Logic app, can fit within your existing current Microsoft 365 licensing, because we're using the Power App, we're using Power Automate, we're using the Teams connector, we're using everything that does not require a P2 license, or whatever the licenses are called now for Power Apps. You'll have the different connectors in it for reading and writing to the SharePoint list. There's going to be an admin's team, and then you have your user side too, that you're going to have permissions that you're going to have to set for the Power App. Now, for the deployment of this, it's a little involved, but you don't have to be a developer to deploy this. You do have to be a global tenant admin to be able to deploy this, though. And so if you don't have that capability, you can have someone within your org, that has approval to do it. But even if you don't have that access, I'm used to having kings to the kingdom. So now being at core, I'm learning what it's like to be a regular end user again, which is great. But there's things, if I want to have maybe something deployed in my organization, I might demo it out in my own environment first to see if it's a good fit, and then talk to somebody within our org about getting it deployed. But the purpose of this session, I'm not going to, due to time, I'm not going to actually do the full deployment, but what I'm going to talk through is the actual steps. So for any of you that decide to deploy it, you'll have the tools to be able to do that. Now, there's a couple of things that have to be involved, and my screenshots might be outdated, but what I'm going to do is go into my team settings. And so this is an admin setting. You have to be a Teams admin, Teams tenant admin to be able to access the settings. But let's say if you downloaded or signed up for a developer tenant, this is something that if you sign up for a developer tenant, you will be the admin of your tenant. So then you can go through these steps. But one of the things I want to check here is I'm going to go into my Teams admin center. And I just want to ensure these app templates are considered custom apps. And so custom apps, there is a setting for you to set on what you want to allow. And the first things first, I'm going to go to manage apps in the Teams admin center. And I'm showing you this because some orgs have done this. I'm going to go to org-wide app settings. And if I go in here, I want to make sure that custom apps is enabled. If this was turned off, then that means I could not deploy it no matter what. But I'm checking to make sure that is enabled. And now you're going to notice here on my org-wide app settings that I have everything enabled. And it's recommended to keep that stuff enabled and then control and lock down what you want to allow through permission policies instead. So in your permission policies is where you can decide if you want to allow any apps at all or not. And some orgs are only allowing Microsoft apps, others are allowing Microsoft and approved apps, while others may have it open. Well, if you want to test apps out in your org, the common practice is to, create a custom permissions policy. In this case, I might have one for having our IT department test the different apps that we want to test before we allow it to be used org-wide. So you can set up different permission policies, and I'm not going to dive through that. There is, I'll make sure I update my slides with more resources, including one to all these settings, but these are just something for you to be aware of. But I'll just go into my org-wide settings. So custom apps is allowed. I don't have to worry about anything, but I am an admin. But those are things that you'd want to check. And then after you have those checked, you're making sure that your settings are okay and that you can allow the apps. The next thing would be going through your deployment. So what I would do is I would go to the link for the request a team app and then download the latest version. And then you could go through the steps of deploying this app. And so you can actually just download the zip file, or if you're a big Git command person, you could, you can run the script to download it locally. One of the things I want people to be aware of is if you're running Windows 10, Windows 11, what happens is when you download zip files from the internet, they will automatically be protected or blocked. And that's done by design. So if I were to download a file, and in this case, I'm just going to use, let me go here to demos here. Okay, go to demos. So I downloaded some zip files here, and I think it's already unblocked, but if I were to click properties and it was blocked, I would actually have a blocked icon here that I would click the checkbox to unblock. And that's what I have on my screenshot. Oops, my bad. Let me go back to here. Okay, so just that's a habit I have. So that's a habit to get into. Now I've had it where people have unzipped a file and everything worked with certain things, or you unzip it and files are missing. So if you do this and you forget about it and you go and you realize that you're missing files in this deployment, that would be the reason why. So you want to make sure that you unblock your file before you extract it. So after I have everything extracted, I'll prep everything, but there's some steps that you'd have to go through in the deployment. So one of them is setting up your SharePoint and Azure resources, and you're going to do that by running a PowerShell script. Another one is you're going to create an admin group. You'll end up setting up Power Apps or importing the Power Apps and configuring it. You're going to import the flows. So you're going to set up Power Automate flows. You're also going to have another where you're also going to have to be able to share that Power Apps and SharePoint site with your users. And then the next step would be to install the Teams app or the Teams package and then adding it to Teams. So there is steps on it. And if I were to go back to the deployment guide here, you're going to see all the steps. So it's going to have the prerequisites and telling you what is required. One of the things you want to make sure that you have is a service account. The service account is what you're going to want to use for the Logic app. And so that service account will be used for the Logic app. It's going to be used to connect to the SharePoint list, to read the requests that come in and what it's going to be approved. And then that service account is going to be used to also auto provision the team. So there are instructions on here. There's even a link to the latest release here. There have been some updates. I'm still going through this latest new deployment to see if there's any issues. So what I'm going to show you is an existing deployment that I have, but it has all, telling you everything that you need to do. And so that's what you'll end up setting up. And so the first part of it, like I mentioned, when you run the scripts, it's going to create a SharePoint site. Now, I think I had issues when I initially first did this, and sometimes I think I ended up just creating the site myself, and then I ran some scripts to do some stuff. But you can also manually create these lists as well. I think there's instructions in there if you can't run PowerShell or you're having issues running the PowerShell to do that. But what's going to happen? I forgot to launch my Zoom it real quick. Give me a second. Heavily rely on this tool. Okay, so going back to here, what you're going to have are 3 SharePoint lists. Now, this solution uses SharePoint lists, but you can absolutely modify it to use something else. If you wanted to use Azure SQL, if you wanted to use Dataverse, I mean, you can customize this the way you want it. But I'm going to show you the way that this solution is currently built. So the setup process, you will have a list that's going to have all your Teams templates in here. And I have the out-of-the-box ones in here, and then I created some customized ones. You can actually remove the ones that you don't want. This is all fully customizable. So what's going to happen with that SharePoint list is actually what holds the templates, that the user is going to see the list of options that go in the dropdown when they're requesting a team, choosing to choose from an existing template. So that is driven by this SharePoint list. Then when you're going through the setup as well, there's another list called team request settings. This is kind of a one and done type of thing. As you're going through the provisioning process, you're going to have to update some parameters here, such as the tenant URL. And this is a demo tenant, so I don't care that you guys are seeing my information here. Teams ID, Teams channel, there's information you're going to have to get and put in here, and that's all outlined in the steps. And then there's another list that's going to be used to hold the request, so that when somebody submits a request, it's going to dump that request in this SharePoint list, and then the flow is going to use this list to go through the approval process to approve or reject that request. And then the Logic app is going to read into this for the provisioning side. Now, from the Power App side, you'll end up having a Power App zip file that you'll import as a Canvas app, and then you're going to walk through the process of, you just go through the process in the instructions to deploy that. And you can rename this, you can change it to whatever you want. Like I mentioned, what I'm showing you is what was out of the box. Then you're also going to have to share this app with people that you're going to want to have access. So in this case, I have two accounts. I have two accounts, and on here I've got permissions to that, and then I have where everyone within my current org is a user of this app. And then the other thing you have to make sure is they actually have access to write back. Whoops, let's go back to here. That they have access to where the SharePoint lists are as well. So this will be because even though your users are not going to go to the SharePoint site and go into any of this stuff, what's going to happen is they're going to access your app. They're going to access this through the Power App. And in this example or a demo right here, I have this Power App added as a Teams tab. And so I can go in here, the users can go in here and say, okay, I want to put in a request. Okay. So part of the deployment, so I showed you that you set up SharePoint, your Azure resources. That's right. Let me go to the Azure side. So what'll get provisioned in Azure is a resource group with two logic apps, a key vault, and your API connections. And there is a logic app called Process Team Request. Let me go into Power Automate as well. So you're going to have a SharePoint site that gets provisioned. You're going to have a team that gets provisioned, and the team is going to be for the admins that only the admins that can approve the request would have access to. So you'll have your SharePoint site, you'll have your requested team, admins team, and that's all that's if you want to use that or not. And then you have your SharePoint site with the list. You're also going to have your Power App that you're going to import, and you're going to have to update. And then you're also going to have a couple different flows in here. Now I have my flows shared, so I have to go with shared with me. But there's two different flows here. And the reason why there's two different flows, when your user is going in to put in a request, first things they're going to choose is, are you going to build from scratch or use a template? I'm going to click on Build New. And when I click on Build New, first thing I have to choose is what's the visibility. Now, your organization may want it to where any team, it has to always be private. So you can even remove the option for it to not even be public, that you force it to be private. But that's all up to you. So here I'm putting in setting the privacy settings for this request. And then I go back to here. And then the next thing your users are going to do is put in a team name. So I'll put a name in here that I know already exists. Or let me do school transformation survey. So your users are going to put in a team name, and they will not be able to click on the next button. That's going to be disabled until they check the availability. And there's a button here that's actually going to trigger a flow. So if I click check availability, this is going to trigger a flow that's going to give back a message to my Power App. So it checked if it was available and came back and said the team name is taken, try again. Now, if I go into Power Automate, that button triggers this flow right here, check team availability. If I click on this, I should see that this was triggered, was 22 seconds ago, and it succeeded. And so what this flow does is it's going to go in and it does checks. It's got some variables. It checks to see if the group exists. It checks the site exists and so on. So it's doing a check, and then what's going to happen is it's going to respond to the Power App, and that's where that message is displayed back in the Power App. Now let me do a different one. Teams Nation. So now I'm checking availability again, which means it triggered the flow and it gave me back the response and it said this is available. Now this app does require a description and business reason. demo. Putting a business reason, and of course you can modify all this as well. And then I'll click on next. And when I click on next, the other thing this app has built in automatically is forcing the requester to put in 2 owners. I think this is important because right now, out of the box with Teams, if anyone creates a team, they will become the owner, but they're not required to add additional owners. Well, it's best practice to have 2 owners because you could have someone that's within your org and they leave, and then what happens? I mean, I believe now there's updates have been made so that someone does get promoted as an owner, but it's best practice to make sure anytime a team is created that you have at least 2 owners. So in this app here, I'll go ahead and say, okay, well, I'm creating actually I'm putting this request for me, so I'll put this in, and then I want to set another owner. I'll make Tony Stark. Yes, I'm a big Marvel fan. I'll make Tony Stark the second owner. And then here they have the option to add members, and it's not required, because what'll happen is if this gets provisioned, then they'll get an email to let them know that the team's being created, and then they can go in and add the members. But they can add up to 2 members here, and then click next. And when I click next, your users will get a preview of the request. So they'll get a preview of the request, and then I'm gonna go ahead and submit it. And then if I submit it, request has been submitted, I can check the status. And now I can see, okay, my team has been submitted. My request has been submitted. Okay. So what happens on the back end side of that, if I go back into Teams, or not to Teams, I'm sorry, SharePoint, I'm going to go in the team requests list. And now you're going to see that request I just submitted has now been added to the SharePoint list. And then what's going to happen on the flow side, let's go back to my flows. The team request approval is going to kick off. So this is going to run, and now I can see there is a flow running because a new item was added to the SharePoint list, which triggers this flow. So what this flow is going to do, it's going to go through the approval process, and this is where out of the box I mentioned where you can, part of the deployment process, you're actually going to create a Teams admin team, and in there it's going to post an adaptive card for the approval process. So if I go back in here, I am an admin. I'll go into this request, an admin's team. And now you can see I have the request here. So an adaptive card was sent to here for the approval process. And here's where I can approve or reject. And then I can approve, click submit. And when I submit and approve, that flow is going to continue to run. It's going to wait for the response, get the response, and then it's going to go through the process here and say, okay, it's been approved. And it'll post an updated card to the channel. Okay. Then if I go back to the SharePoint list here, this has been, it was originally pending approval. I'll go ahead and refresh the page. And now I can see that it's been approved. So now this request has been approved. So now I have a queue of 2 in here that are approved but haven't been provisioned yet. And this is where the Logic app comes into place. So this solution will auto provision the team. And there are things you will have to also update in the Logic app. And like I mentioned, all of this is in the instructions. So you would have to put in your SharePoint list that you want to pull from and what is the list name, set how frequently you want it to run. This is a demo tenant, so I don't have it frequent because I don't want to, I'm just using it when I demo. So when I typically do this, I'll run the trigger just for demo purposes, but you might decide you want to have it once a day, every hour, something like that. You can configure that the way you want it. And so what'll happen is this Logic app is more advanced, and meaning that there is a Teams connectors and actions now in Power Automate, but it's still limited. You can provision a team, but you don't have all the functionality right now currently in Power Automate to do everything that you can do in the actions here. So this is why the Logic app is part of this solution. And what this Logic app is going to do is going to go through, obviously I have some issues right here with my connections. I forgot, I changed my password and I need to update that. But it'll go through, loop through if there's members or owners that, the owners that have been assigned, go through, create the team, check to see if it was going to be created from a template or not. And it gets, this logic app gets all the information from here. What's the visibility? And then it's going to, have the other information in, here we go, the owners. I didn't put any members, but it pulls all this information through the logic app to process, and then eventually the team will get generated. And when the team gets generated, now this is a bad example because my service account is actually also one of my accounts, but this would be whatever your service account is. And so what'll happen is it'll auto provision the team, and the requester will get an email letting them know that the team has been provisioned, and then they can click on it and they'll also see it show up here. So this is a great process. So going back to the deployment side of it, you download the GitHub solution, run the PowerShell script, register your app as a SharePoint add-in. This is step one. You're going through that process. You're going to end up having to get a link to the team. All of this is in the instructions because I showed you in that SharePoint list settings, you have to put in the ID. So you're going to also have to create the admin group, and there's steps on what you need to do for that. So like I mentioned, this is a little bit more involved, but it's, it's not, it's a little bit more involved, but many people I know have deployed it, including myself. By going in here, and so here I have the admin group ID and the channel ID, and I updated my SharePoint list for that, for this deployment. Then your next thing you're going to do is import the Canvas app. You're going to set up the Canvas app, import it into Power Apps, and then in here you'll go through the process. Anytime you have a red warning here or error, it's because this is using, when the Power App's imported, it's going to use whatever was used for the initial export of that app or creation of the app. And so you're going to select that to change it to be your account. So anything here you're going to change that's applicable to you. And you're going to have to open the Power App after you import it. This is a little bit, I think it's changed a little, like I mentioned. This is from one of the apps that I have currently working. The OnStart function may have changed a little bit in the latest release, and so that's what I've actually been working on deploying. But what you'll put in is the group ID of the admin group that you're using. So there's just a minor update that you're going to configure in the Power App. And then step 4, you're going to configure the flow. So you're going to go in, import the flow, and then you're going to have to configure it. You're going to have to go in and update the actions anywhere it's using a SharePoint connector, and put in your site address and the list, and so on, so that it's tied to your SharePoint site. And then you're going to need to share the app if you're ready to share it. So when I'm testing this out, I may just share it with a few of the people in my team to have them try it, share to admins and a few users we want to test. And then when you're ready for prime time, you need to make sure you share that as well. Then you're also going to download the app to add to Teams. And this is a great feature that I love now within Power Platform. Once I have my app ready to go, you can click on here and you have an option here, add to Teams. So you can add to Teams. And if I click add to Teams, here we go. I haven't tested this add to Teams option now yet, but what I've done is I've downloaded the app. And for this one, you are going to have to download the app because you're going to have to make a slight change, but it's all in the instructions. So what'll happen is you're going to download the app, and then there is a JSON file you're going to have to update. I did double check the latest instructions, and it looks like this still has to be done. Like I mentioned, I'm working on retesting the latest deployment to see if there's any issues or not. But if you do run through any issues on this deployment, open a GitHub issue, and you can also reach out to me. But you'll end up it's got the steps. Going to update the JSON file. You're going to save and rezip the file. Then once you rezip it, then you're going to upload it to your team's environment, upload it as a custom app. And then you can decide if you want to post it in a team, add it to a Teams channel. Okay. So I have this deployed, and in here, if I were to go and run it, and I'm not going to run it, I'm running out of time, but if I were to, it takes about 5 minutes to provision per team. So if I were to run this, it's going to go through my list, go through all the steps, and then it's going to provision it. Now I'll show you what your users would see and show you that it can be customized. Let's see if I have access yet. So I'm going to go into Teams, and we are using a modified, our own version of the request a team. So if I were to click on request a team, okay, I know my access was fixed today, but I still have an issue. But this is, I'm glad it happened because it shows you here that permissions are important. So right now I can't access the one within my organization, but I do have some screenshots for you. So if I were to go back into my template, not my template, sorry, in Teams tenant here, in Teams, if I click to join or create, I'm just a regular user here. I go in here, I only have the option to insert a code for the team. So this is what it would be like for your users. Now the other tenant that I was showing you in, I'm a full global tenant admin, so I have access to everything. But in here, so if I want to request a team within my org, I'm gonna have to use the request a team app after my permissions are, after I am granted permissions. But what we've done at Core is it's been modified. So at Core, we're only allowing people to request a team to be created if it's related to a client in a project. So this has been modified. So we took the app template that I'm showing you that you can deploy and modified it to fit the needs at Core BTS. So what'll happen is the user will click start. Once they click start, then it's been updated so that they have a list of clients to find the client, and then once they choose the client, it's going to populate the projects that we currently have active for that client. And so what we've been doing at Core is when we're engaged in a client project, we have a team provisioned for them that we use throughout the project. So I couldn't get you more screenshots of this because it's customer PII data that I can't share, but I just wanted to show you that this is something that you can deploy within your environment and you can fully customize it to fit your needs. Oh, I was already sharing. Okay. I do have the links to resources here. One of them, overview of Logic Apps, another link for the Microsoft 365 developer program. I also have a link here for the app templates. So like I mentioned, go to aka.ms/Teams app templates. If you were to sign up for a developer program, but you can do, like I mentioned, Logic Apps requires a paid Azure subscription. It uses very minimal. So I believe with the developer tenant, you do get a certain number of credits. So you can use that, or I've done it where I've used a different Azure tenant to provision certain parts, but can still tie it to another one of my environments. So that's a little more advanced, but I want you to know that that's something you can do. Once again, I have my contact information here as well. And for any of you interested in the ebook, there is the QR code for that.